Hi folks, my name is Girish, the host for Back to Basics, another Back to Basics for another week. Today we are gonna talk about the what we used to deal with in healthcare and what we're dealing with now. What I'm saying is from a digital point of view, from a transformation point of view, and how we are dealing with it today. Is it making it worse or is it making it better for us to get a better life and a better health? So, guys, today I have a person. Her name is Kristen, and she's an amazing person. I just spoke with her a few minutes ago, right before the recording. But the sense that I got, and I hope it's the same way for her, is she's an amazing person, and she'll be totally happy to answer all the questions that I'm going to ask today. And I'm so delighted that she's here. Kristen, how are you? And thanks for coming to Back to Basics.
I'm great. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. So before we get into the details of healthcare and everything else, I would like to know, what does back to basic mean to you?
So, back to basics, I think, is really foundational, whether we're talking about healthcare or any serious societal issue that we're facing. Because at the end of the day, a lot of these huge, complex problems really require a very foundational understanding of the basics and how we got there.
Yeah. Thank you so much, by the way, because I guess you and I are on the same wavelength when it comes to back to basics and how it's supposed to be. So thank you again for that. So Kristen, before we go a little further, let's talk about you and who you are and what do you do, and I want to explain to people why I invited you to this show.
Sure. So a little bit about my background. I'm actually a lawyer by training, and I practiced in corporate restructuring law for several years in Delaware, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, before joining state government with the state of New Jersey, where I first was Deputy Attorney General and then was Special Assistant Counsel to the prior governor's administration. And that was really my first, learning experience with healthcare. I oversaw Department of Banking and Insurance and the Division of Pensions and Benefits within Treasury, which was the health plan for over 800,000 New Jersey public employees. It's actually the fourth largest health plan in the country and the second largest public sector health plan in the country. So, over a $7 billion spend. And when the last administration ended, I was asked to go to the treasurer's office and help run the health plan. And naively, I thought I could do anything, and maybe I still do. And I took on the job. I'm really excited. And, over the course of my 3 years with the state and the state health plan, we really did some great things. We saved, I think we're credited with saving over $2.6 billion over those 3 years through various initiatives, including more creative procurement strategies, contracting strategies, more aggressive oversight and accountability, financial guarantees. Really everything that we did only enhanced our members' benefits. We never took benefits away or increased cost share. And actually, in February of 22, as a result of some of that good work, all of the teachers that were part of our health plan will get a 1-month premium holiday, as will their local school districts. So not only did we, save a lot of money for the state, but a lot of that money is being given back to the taxpayers and the members that contributed to the health plan.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kristen, for explaining what you do and what you are. What is the vision for the next coming year that we're going to be getting into, or I should say, even the future ones. So thank you again, by the way, because it's definitely a tough work that you're getting into, and it's very, very tough decisions. People should appreciate people like you and even the law enforcements that we have also, because you know what? We're living in a tough time now. We don't know what we're getting into, even though that we have already done 18, 19 months of this, and I'm talking about the pandemic that we're living in. So thank you again for that, and saving money at the same time, which is also a great big deal. So thank you again. So the healthcare, what we grew up with, and today, financially has changed in many, many different ways. I guess the investments are more towards technology and getting things better. Or are we spending more money on pharmaceuticals? What are your thoughts on these? I mean, where are we spending the extra dollars and, or I should
Yeah.
say, yeah, go ahead.
I mean, it's such a great question to lead with, because I think if you look at over, let's say, the last 20 to 30 years, we are spending exponentially more on healthcare and when I say healthcare, I mean the system of healthcare, right?
Hmm.
We're approaching 20% of our GDP going towards the healthcare sector as of 2021, which has just grown remarkably over the last few decades. And when you look at the outcomes and the population health that we've achieved as a result of that financial investment, one really has to ask, are we getting our money's worth?
Hmm.
And I am firmly of the opinion, and this might be unpopular, but I'm firmly of the opinion, and I think there's plenty of data to back it up, that we are not getting better health outcomes. I think our mortality rates, both as a result of COVID, but even before COVID, um, we're not improving. Disparities in health outcomes amongst our, different, socioeconomic groups and, minority groups has just grown, not improved. I would firmly argue that we're not getting our money's worth, and that's as a result of where the money is being spent.
Is it because this thought process just came to mind? Do you think it's because we're getting more urgent cares versus going to the ER and hospitals? Because now
I mean, that's
now we're dividing, right? So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I'll take it as like a two-part question.
Sure.
First, the urgent care ER piece, and then where I think we need to go
Mm.
and why. Right? So urgent cares, as everybody who lives in you don't even have to live in a highly densely populated area to see the proliferation of urgent care centers,
That's right.
right? And the idea with urgent care centers was initially, okay, you shouldn't have to go if to level set, for the audience, a primary care visit in the United States is going to average around $80 that's paid, $80 to $120. That's
Mm-hmm.
for a standard PCP visit, right?
Right.
An urgent care center visit is going to average anywhere from $250 to $500,
That's right.
right? And then an ER visit is going to average anywhere from 1,200 on the very low end to like 2,500 on the higher end for and when I'm giving these numbers, these are for somebody seeing the same earache or the same sprained ankle, right? This is not like your acute, gunshot wound
That's
going to
right.
the ER. This is right. So those are sort of your three different prices. And urgent cares came about as a result of people wanting to end, having to go to the ER for a $1,500 visit for an earache. Makes sense, right? If it's on the weekend and your PCP is not in, you need somewhere to go that's not an ER. Answer, urgent care.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the business model of making $400 a visit versus $90 a visit in our, general practitioner or family physician's office is very lucrative.
Mm.
And what you probably, and your audience, now that we're thinking about this, will notice is urgent cares in the beginning were, let's say a privately owned, like a Care Spot or you can name any of these
Sure.
little companies, right, that
Yep.
sort of popped up to fill this niche. But now what you're seeing more of, I'm going to guess with a lot of confidence, is as you drive along that corridor in your hometown, it's a hospital-owned urgent care,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
Because they recognize that this is where the money is,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
So the proliferation of urgent cares have now not only displaced the inappropriate ER utilization, but they had the unintended consequence of also replacing that very valuable primary care relationship,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
If it's easier for me and cheaper for me to just go to the urgent care when I have an earache or when I'm not feeling well and need, to see if I need an antibiotic, am I going to call my family physician and wait 3 days? Or
Hmm.
am I just going to show up to the urgent care, pay my $10 copay or $15 copay, and be done with it?
Hmm.
But the loss of that primary care relationship in the US healthcare system, because we've devalued it so much,
Hmm.
has really, really hurt us. And
Hmm.
I think going back to, are we getting our money's worth?
Sure.
If you look at what, if you look across developed countries
Hmm.
around the world and
Hmm.
what they spend on healthcare and their health outcomes, you're going to notice the predominant trend for those countries that have better health outcomes and spend less
Hmm.
is, some might say, oh, well, socialized medicine, blah, blah, blah. That's not it. The predominant theme is an elevation and a real value given to primary care. Everybody in the UK there was just a study the other day that showed how many visits that folks in the UK have with their primary care physician and the
Sure.
value that they see in that relationship.
Sure.
That is the predominant theme. And one of the notes that I wanted to make sure I touched upon in our conversation today is where I hope to see the future of healthcare move, and that is in the rebirth, if you will, and the re-emphasis on primary care and good primary care and advanced primary care. And we're going to talk a little bit about technology, but tech-enabled primary care, because that is, I hope, the future. And I think that's where we're going to find value, and really start to not only, lessen the cost growth curve, but really start to bend it in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to definitely talk about the details there, but very quickly, if you don't mind, and if you can give a brief answer, what do you think we are getting forced to do less yearly checkups? Because it's getting too expensive for everybody, right? Have you thought of that?
Yeah.
Maybe there's what is it, the word that I'm looking for? Uh, backfire on us. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. I mean, do you mean as a result of COVID?
Yeah, well,
Generally.
even
Yeah.
before. What are your thoughts on that? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think screenings are an interesting topic because, and preventative services, right? So, um, screenings and preventative services, when appropriate, are really key to better health outcomes. And it's really high value care. So I think, and it's a great question again to really get back to basics, because as somebody that was, sort of tasked with managing $7 billion in spend in the health care administration for over, almost a million people for the
Mm-hmm.
state of New Jersey, I had to explain, very often and very frequently that increased utilization at primary care and increased utilization at, let's say, physical therapy offices, or increased cancer screenings when appropriate, is really high value, right?
Right.
And we don't want to be penny wise and pound foolish when we're talking about, a good example was sort of the birth and death of the consumer driven health plan, because really all it did was prevent or dissuade people from going and getting high value care, right? Because they
Right.
had to pay out of pocket until they hit a certain deductible or whatever. We want those people to get, if they're having a low backache that could be solved through, like, a couple of months of physical therapy. Whereas if they let it go because they're concerned about how much that MRI is going to cost, and a year later they're looking at a back surgery because they've ignored the pain.
That's right.
Like, that's just such low value care,
Sure.
when we could really have inserted ourselves in the process sooner. So being more smart about the design and how I think that is one of the benefits of the Affordable Care Act,
Mm.
was making preventative services free of charge for everybody. But I also think that preventative screenings, solely to check a box if it's not necessary, can lead to, false positives, or, more invasive biopsies that might not be necessary. So it's a balancing act. Um, as far as COVID goes, I think that as we enter 22 and 23, we will have sort of an onslaught of later stage cancers. I think the numbers are already bearing that out. Later stage cancers, the cost associated with delayed care will certainly be there. You know, on the flip side, I think that and I hope that we as a society recognize a bit more the value of taking care of yourself, because we do know that those comorbidities and pre-existing conditions and a lot of the things that, can be controlled by lifestyle and like food and exercise,
Yeah.
can it really be a shield for us in keeping us healthy and protecting us from things like COVID. So I think that there are some silver linings there, but absolutely we will be paying the quote unquote price from a health perspective for a long time. And I think one of the most difficult to unpack and see in the numbers will be the mental health impact on our children and on our caregivers and really on society. But I mean, those are some of the more impacted groups as we move forward. And I think we have to be very prepared for,
Of course.
or try our best for that, for a mental health crisis that is here and will get worse if we don't try and address it as soon
Yeah,
as possible.
absolutely. One of the comments is I saw a TV show yesterday. It was Big Bang Theory, and one of the episodes where Sheldon, who was stuck in the hospital, and he went into a room and he says that I'm scared to go to the hospital because there's a whole bunch of germs around him.
Yeah.
So just take that example. Times by a million of other people don't want to go into hospitals because of this whole germaphobe.
Right.
So what are your thoughts on that? Because now, just a quick answer on that, because you know what, it's a really tough answer to give, right?
Yeah. I mean, I actually think that that's fantastic, right? Because we were way too quick to jump to the hospital as like our first line of defense.
Right.
Hospital acquired infections are responsible for like hundreds of thousands of deaths.
That's right.
And it's only increasing. The American healthcare system, if interacted with in the wrong way, can be one of the most dangerous things to your health.
That's right.
That exists. So just a quick anecdote, our ER utilization went way down during COVID, obviously, right? During especially those first few months.
Sure.
And then it sort of leveled out, but still, because of the folks like Sheldon and all of those like Sheldon who have said, I don't really want to risk sepsis just because I have a sprained ankle.
That's right.
And stayed out of the ER, like there was a push, I think, by hospitals and the carriers to say we need to get back to normal. And I was very much of the opinion, like, I like this new normal. This is appropriate ER utilization. Like, this is if you need sutures or an x-ray, right? Or, you're experiencing heart pain or chest pain. Like, those are the things the ER are for, not for your some of the everyday utilization we're seeing in the past.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you again, by the way. Now, just one quick thing before we get into the technology phase of the question. Why is, and you don't have to answer this, but why do you think U.S. is more expensive versus other countries? Other countries, I have noticed, is cheaper than us. Mm-hmm. Is it because we're more advanced? Or are they more advanced? Or do you think the infrastructure is different? What are your thought process on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we could probably spend another 6 hours talking about that. But I think to answer that question, I'm going to say what it's not.
Okay.
Right? I think that I'll say what it's not and then what I think. What it's not, and I think that there is a huge misperception that it's because of capitalism, or, right. It's because we're not a universal socialized payer system. I don't think that's it. I think if you actually look at our healthcare system, it's fairly regulated. It's just very poorly regulated, right? Some of the regulations that are in place in our healthcare system are a direct cause of our overinflated prices.
Wow.
An example would be with the passage of the Affordable Care Act, there was a provision that said, it's called a medical loss ratio. It says, for every healthcare dollar spent for an insured person, you can keep 15% in profit and administrative costs, and you have to spend the other 85 cents on that dollar on medical claims, et cetera. Well, when your profit, and these are profit-seeking entities,
Yes.
when your profits are capped at a percentage of a variable, the only way to increase shareholder value, which you have a legal obligation to do, is to increase that variable. So we've perversely incentivized healthcare companies that we think are there to lower the cost of our healthcare, like insurance companies. The only way they make more profit and revenue is when the cost of healthcare goes up, right? So that's just an example of a way in which we've regulated and poorly regulated the industry that's led to increased costs. I mean, and another way of looking at this is if you were to say, oh, it's because, capitalism and it's a free market, and the healthcare system in the United States is really the antithesis of a free market. Nobody knows what the price of a service is.
That's right.
You don't get to choose where you go, right?
That's right.
For most, for some shoppable services you do, but if you don't know the price, how can you?
How can you, right?
There's no really central location where we can look to high quality ratings, right? There's no consumer report for a healthcare system. So I think that's not the case, not the cause. I do think that the market's broken. The market's broken, but it's working for those that are benefiting from it. Those that are benefiting from it are the big hospitals, the insurance carriers, the pharmaceutical companies, and all of the middlemen in between, like brokers, consultants, etc. They're fine. They're doing quite well, actually. If you look at any major city in the country and you see where the cranes are, they're probably building a new hospital with a glass atrium. They're doing great, right? Who's not doing well? The U.S. patient, right? 1 in 6 people experience medical debt, right? People are hurting. They're not getting good care. And oh, by the way, we're not getting healthier, right? So I think that the market's broken, and I think that there's no lack of innovative ideas and solutions. I think that there's a crisis in leadership to get us to that future state.
Yeah, I think we're living in a financial world crisis also when it comes to healthcare. For example, if I spend on whatever I'm doing, okay, something serious, not a ankle sprain or something like that, I would get maybe $20,000, $30,000 balance from the medical, and I have no way to go and pay that off or get even a monthly payment also. So I mean, we're living in a crisis world when it comes to that, because people are fixed with a monthly aspect, and they never look at the other side, that we do need some what is the extra money in our banks to do that. So
right.
So yeah, thank you again for that. Now, regarding technology, next week's episode on Back to Basics,
like this on screen with a physician or a therapist, has been really promising. My cautionary note there is, like, I think that there can be a lot of value derived from technology and tech-enabled healthcare. The question that I think we need to make sure that stays at the forefront is who's going to be the beneficiary of that value. Is it going to be private equity? Is it going to be the major legacy players that just take money out of one pocket and keep it in another? I saw, as I was driving down a local route here, an advertisement for an emergency room, a major hospital in the area with notoriously high reimbursement rates, emergency room virtual care, right? I happen to know that hospital, they're playing the market because